αποtunin και ως του αιώνος.
Εις το όνομα του Πατρός και του Υιού και του Αγίου Πνεύματος. Amen. Please be seated. Καλημέρα σας. Good morning. Time and time again, the Lord tells us of our worth, of our value, of the importance of His followers, of who we are as people. He uses many analogies, comparing us to vital components of the universe. Today we heard the famous, "You are the light. You are the light of the world. And so let your light shine." Now this image we use time and time again. The great battle of light and darkness. Pascha, the light emerging from the darkened tomb. But today, he uses a different analogy. That just one sentence before Christ told us, "You are the light," he told his disciples something interesting. "You are the salt of the earth. And if your salt loses its saltiness, then it deserves to be trampled underfoot." Now, I never gave this line much thought. I said, okay, salty. We should be salty, whatever that means. In other words, the flavor of the salt is important. But the more I meditated and thought of what is that value of salt, what is the importance of salt, something that we find so abundantly on every table, in every restaurant, we take it for granted. We have salt everywhere we look, and usually too much salt. But in the ancient world, salt had a very different purpose, a different connotation. You see, salt as a preserver, as something that ancient peoples could use to keep their food. Salt was one of the most highly traded commodities of the ancient world. And so those cities that thrived with salt, that had salt trades, were typically the superpowers of the ancient world. Our very own Byzantine Empire that we hail from, that we come from, they controlled the buying and selling of salt. The great traders of Venice were not even allowed to dock their ships in the ancient cities because it was such a controlled commodity. Now, salt is something that has flavor, yes. But the preservation of life is something we can't take for granted. The ancient Roman soldiers were paid in salt. Part of their pay was in salt. It was called the solarium. We get our word salary from salt. Salt had many, many uses and purposes. And over the years, it took on even superstitions. That in the ancient world, they believed that if you spilled salt, you would have bad luck. And so you would have to throw a pinch of salt over your left shoulder. even as far as when they believed in vampires. Salt would kill vampires. They would use salt to ward off evil spirits. And did you know that even in Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, Judas is spilling the salt? He is knocking over the salt cellar in that fateful line when he said, "Who will betray you, Lord?" "The one who dips his hand will betray me." And so this depth, this thing that we take for granted, something that is so innocuous, something that we just have, Christ is pointing to a deeper meaning. Because on the one hand, he says, you are light. You are ethereal. You are like the spirit, the wind, heavenly. But on the other hand, you are salt. You are of the earth. You, just as you are, not as something you might be, not as something that you should be or could be, but that in your essence, as followers, as disciples, as children of God, you are something valuable. You are something that makes this world worth living. Something that preserves, something that protects and keeps those things that we hold most dear. Something as simple as salt can teach us so much. And so, my brothers and sisters, I ask you, are you okay in your own skin? Offering whatever talents unique to yourself, offering the flavor, the diversity, the uniqueness that each one of you brings, that value. And what are you preserving? What are you saying, this is it? This is important. This is what I am protecting for my life, my family, and my children. And so, in our lives, in that moment when we maybe question, wonder, who am I? The Lord gives us this gift, that you are valuable. You are important just as you are. And so let us bring our hearts, our souls, and minds to build and preserve this beautiful world. Amen.